Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a virtual town hall on social justice and community policing. We're really here because of the death of George Floyd, and we want to discuss issues of racial equality in the city of Bowie and beyond, and how that relates to our police department. We're very honored tonight to have a small panel of people who have a deep interest and a vested interest in this community. And I'd like to start with Mayor Adams. First, we'd like to extend our sincerest thanks to Mayor Adams for taking the time to join us, especially in light of the recent passing of his daughter. It's clear that despite this personal hardship, Mayor Adams truly recognizes the importance of being here with you tonight and acknowledging and addressing these community concerns about the topic of community policing. So Mayor Adams, our condolences, first of all, but thank you so much for being with us, and I welcome you to make some opening remarks now.
Thank you so very much, and so very kind of you. Well, good evening, everyone. I would like to thank the Bowie Police Department, the Bowie Diversity Committee, the Bowie Public Safety Committee, and all those who assisted in organizing this virtual town hall meeting on social justice and community policing moving forward together. And all those who have joined us this evening to listen and participate. At the outset, I would really like to say my condolences go out to all those who have lost family and friends as we suffer through this pandemic together. This evening, I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to the families of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and the many families that have lost their loved ones to violence at the hands of law enforcement. Unfortunately, it is in the shadow of Mr. Floyd's death that we are called again to address the realities regarding the strained relationship at times between the African American community, other communities of color, and law enforcement. As the mayor, on behalf of the city council, we want each of you to know that we remain committed to making sure the voices of all our citizens are heard, and that we will not shy away from necessary conversations with the goal of making any changes that we need to in our community. This forum allows our proud law enforcement agency and our committees to not only hear concerns directly from you, but for you to get a response to those concerns. I encourage each and every one of you to speak freely during this town hall, as our goal is to have an honest conversation about the current state of social injustices that have been perpetrated upon the African American community and others of color for so many years. We will further discuss the accountable actions that are needed to be taken by our elected officials and law enforcement agencies to eradicate this conduct, because we owe it to you and to the future generations of all of our citizens. This is our community, and we can do this peacefully and respectfully, respecting our commonalities and our diversity. We cannot allow other people to fan the flames of divisiveness within our community. We reap what we sow. If we plant the seeds of anger, particularly in our young people, we will reap a crop of hate later in their lives. We owe them better than that. We owe our community better than that. We owe our future better than that. In closing, I would like to thank the panelists and moderator, and for all of you in engaging in this conversation. I would like to say thank you to Chief Nesky and Deputy Chief Preston for the outstanding work that our city police do. And I have to thank our committees for the insight and leadership that they provide to the city as well. And please continue to keep our community and our nation in prayer, as we are one city, one Bowie. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Adams. Next, I'd like to introduce John Nesky, who's the Chief of Police, and the Chief has been with the department since it was first established back in 2006. So he started as Deputy Chief and is now the Chief of Police and has been for several years. And welcome, John.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. This is not the most ideal set of circumstances to be addressing this, as it is a very emotional and heartfelt topic, and it usually deserves a face-to-face and more interaction, which is a way I would prefer. But we are here, and we are going to make the best of what's available to us during this dual crisis of both the pandemic and the racial inequality and tensions that has brought with it. The first thing I need to stress, and that I can't be more firm about, is that the actions of those officers in Minneapolis in no way reflect the professionalism and care and equity that we should be using and showing in policing. That was an aberration. It should not be tolerated, should not be condoned, and is indefensible. One of the things that we have to remember is that it is a national issue. And while it is a national issue, most of the time and much of the time, problems like this, the solutions usually begin locally, and movements and forward momentum usually begins locally. And that's what we've tried to do, and that's what we will continue to do. We are your police department, and we will never be perfect, but we will always strive to become better and to always move forward, whether it be policy-driven, training-driven, or some of the other topics that we're going to talk about tonight. We will always be there for the community. We will always listen to the community, and we will always be part of the community. We cannot do this alone. It's been that way since I got here in 2006. This has been a partnership, and it will continue to be a partnership through good times and bad. So before we start to dig into the questions, I'm going to put it back to Una and our other panelists.
Thank you, Chief. Next, I'd like to introduce Deputy Chief Dwayne Preston. Dwayne, thank you.
Thank you, Una. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief Nesky. As it's been previously stated, this is a solemn occasion for us to come and discuss the tragic death of Mr. George Floyd. First and foremost, I express my condolences to the Floyd family and all of those that have been impacted by violence against African Americans that's unwarranted. Obviously, as an African American myself, who's the father of African American children, this is an issue that I've wrestled with, and many of you also wrestle with on a daily basis, as I'm on both sides of the issue. I assure you that it is not something that we condone. It is not something that we stand for or represented for in the Bowie Police Department. The motto of our agency is service with integrity, and that is something that we strive to achieve on a daily basis. So we welcome the opportunity to share with you this evening all of our policies, our procedures, the way in which we train our officers. Any question that you will have, it's our pleasure to be able to answer, and hopefully to your satisfaction, be able to provide you the comfort that you need to know that your Bowie Police Department is there to serve you, all residents, equally. That is the oath that we have taken as law enforcement officers, is to serve our community. We pride ourselves in doing that, and that sometimes we may fall short. But as we fall short, we always strive to do the best of our ability to achieve that oath and uphold that oath of office. Thank you for the opportunity. Moving it back to you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Next, I would like to introduce, I don't see her here, so we're going to give her a minute. Elvita Dixon is the chair of the City of Bowie Diversity Committee, and she has been since it was formed in 2004. She will be joining us in just a second and making some introductory remarks. Anthony, she is waiting to come into the call, but is having trouble. But meanwhile, if we could move on to Mr. Delmer Billings, who is the chair of the Public Safety Committee. And he too has been with the committee for a very long time. And Del, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Una. Mr. Mayor, our condolences to you and your loss of your daughter. Chief, Deputy Chief, thank you. Good evening, and thanks to everyone who's participating in this town hall meeting. The Public Safety Committee also expresses its condolences to the Floyd family and to all who have been negatively impacted by the tragedies that have been ongoing over the past weeks, months, and years. As Una indicated, I'm Del Billings. I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee. Our committee is comprised of 9 members who bring a wealth of knowledge and background regarding public safety issues, including police department issues, general public safety and security, fire, EMS, transportation, emergency management, IT, legal issues. Our mission as a public safety committee is very basic. It's to evaluate, assess, examine, and make recommendations relative to the implementation and operation of the police department, general law enforcement in the city, fire safety issues, emergency management programs. We, and many of us, have been involved in the Public Safety Committee in working with the Bowie Police Department even prior to the establishment of the police department. And I think we've had a great hand in working with them in the development of the department, the leadership of the previous chief, Catherine Perez, as well as the current Chief Neske and Deputy Chief Preston, and all the police officers, has been excellent. We have a very, very good working relationship with them, very forthright in upstanding questions, answers, sharing of information, and resolving issues as they come up. Bottom line, however, is that the Public Safety Committee is really the eyes and ears of each and every one of you, our citizens here in Bowie. If you have concerns, if you have issues, certainly don't hesitate to bring those to our forefront so that we can address them and work on them in one collegial way, in one way that we can achieve the goals of safety of our community to ensure that we all have equal protections and are all treated equally. Again, thank you very much for your participation in this important opportunity. And I believe this will enhance the communication between the Bowie Police Department and our citizens here in Bowie to affect safety of our citizens here in Bowie. Thank you, everyone, again.
Thank you, Del. And finally, we have Elvita Dixon, Chair of the Bowie Diversity Committee. Elvita, thank you.
Thank you, Una. Good evening, everyone. Mayor Adams, I express my condolences, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here this evening, and Chief Neske, Dwayne Preston, and also Delmar Billings, and Una, thank you all so much for your support. We are here tonight because we have a problem, and we want to give you all the opportunity, the residents in the city of Bowie, the opportunity to hear your voice. We became aware of this problem, all of us did, with the killing of George Floyd. And there is an underlying problem of systemic racism where people of color, particularly African Americans, are receiving treatment that is disproportionate to the crimes that they've committed, if they have committed any crimes at all, and also they are being killed at a disproportionate rate. And because of the killing of George Floyd, this came to really everyone's attention, but this is something that has been going on for a long time. People are angry, people are in pain because of what they saw, and they are angry because their voices are not being heard. And when you have killing after killing, George Floyd, you had Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Philando Castile, Trayvon Martin. The list goes on and on and on. And so we have a problem here that needs to be addressed, and we wanted to hear from the community. We also are here tonight because we want to talk about the provisions and policies that the city of Bowie has put into place to make sure that we can address the needs of the community and that social justice is being administered, and that we don't get caught up into the same types of scenarios that have played out across America in recent years. And Chief Neske will be able to address many of the questions that you all have come forth with. And we thank you all for submitting your questions in advance. And he will be able to answer a lot of those about the city of Bowie's current practices and provisions. And then finally, we want to leave you with some hope. We want to talk about a prescription for change. Where do we go from here? So that you will know that we hear you, we are listening to you, and we are taking action today and every day to address social justice and make sure that policies are being applied fairly and equitably across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Elvita. I neglected, I'm sorry, at the beginning to introduce myself. I am Una Cooper. I'm chair of the city's, I'm Una Cooper, the communications manager for the city and staff liaison to the diversity committee. And Elvita and I have worked closely for several years. Now, we want to get into the meat of this meeting and hear your thoughts and questions. Before I do, I just want to set the stage a little bit. First of all, I'm getting messages from people that we have maxed out on this meeting. If you are getting texts, similarly, people can view the meeting live on our government channel, which is Verizon 10 or Comcast 71. It's also being broadcast from our website, which is www.cityofbowie.org/view meetings. That's all one word, view meetings. And I apologize, the number seems to be going up a little, so hopefully more people can get on. But I'm not sure if we've really hit a max, because I see we have over 100 people, which is wonderful. And I know a lot of people have things to say. Before the meeting, we had received via email or via the Zoom application over 40 questions. So the police chief will be starting with those questions. And as we progress through the night, we'll also be reading some of the questions that are coming in right now through the Zoom application. And so I will be interjecting them when the chief is talking about the topic of that question. I will interrupt him to make sure that question gets added. So there are basically three categories that he is going to be talking about, and that's policy. There were a lot of questions around that, training, and community policing and making connections with the community. So thank you again for all the questions. And with that, I will turn it back over to the chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Una. And thank you for everyone who brought questions in. We've tried to put as many of them together and answer at one time so we can try to get as many questions as possible. One of the things that we've always tried to do is be very approachable here. So if you have a question that didn't get answered, or if you have something that's on your mind, or you have something that you just want to share with us, I am always free to take an email. Please reach out to me. I answered one earlier today, and don't hesitate to do that. We are here for you. We are open. We are transparent. So one of the first remarks, it's a question/remark that I want to address first because it kind of struck me. And that's someone asked, why haven't you condemned police brutality and stood in solidarity with Black Lives Matter? And I want to say that is not true at all. And I want to really say that kind of forcefully. I put a chief chat out on Friday, the day after the incident, condemning the actions of those officers. And I stand by that. And I will continue to stand by that. Oftentimes when you see police shootings or a police incident, you say, wait and let's look and let's see what the parameters were and see if there was a threat to the officer and all the other things that we look at. There was absolutely none of that with Mr. Floyd's passing. It was just indefensible. There was absolutely no way that encounter should have ended the way it did. And the act was so egregious and so callous that it physically made me sick to my stomach. And they shamed the badge that day. So I want to stand with that. Black Lives Matter, I don't see that as a strictly anti-police stance. Black Lives Matter and police matter, they're not mutually exclusive. They overlap. Black Lives Matter, in my opinion, stretches beyond just the law enforcement aspect. It speaks to the economic disadvantages, the social, economic, educational disadvantages that communities of color and minorities have faced for as long as the U.S. has been in existence. So it encompasses that. And we've had many conversations here, and I've had many conversations with people just about that fact. So please know that we do condemn police brutality. We do condemn anything that is not fair and equitable policing. That's not who we stand for, and that's not what our officers stand for. And I stand behind my officers as they do an outstanding job. I will put our community relations against anybody's in the nation. That is the way we were built. That is the way we will continue to operate. So before I move into policy, I wanted to let you know as well that our policies are based to incorporate the 21st century policing pillars that were put in place by President Obama and his commission. And they are CALIA accredited. And what I mean by that is CALIA is the accreditation process, which we are in our second phase of right now. That first phase was looking at all of our policies, making sure that they meet up to best practices as established by organizations such as PERF, the IACP, and other national bodies. And that first phase, A, made sure that our policies were above reproach and where they were supposed to be, and B, that we followed our own policies. So we feel pretty good about that part of that process. And as we move forward with the next phase, we hope to achieve our first accreditation as a department. So as we move into the policy questions, one of the things that I got a couple times were, has the mayor, city council, or police department considered incorporating policies from the 8 Can't Wait campaign? For those who don't know, the 8 Can't Wait campaign asks that we do 8 of these things: ban chokeholds and strangleholds, require de-escalation, require warning before shooting, exhaust all other means before shooting, have a duty to intervene. What that means is, do our officers have a duty to intervene when they see something illegal happening by another officer? Ban shooting at moving vehicles, require use of force continuums, and require comprehensive reporting. We do 6 of those 8 things already. The only things that we do not do at this time is require the warning before shooting and require the use of force continuum. And I'll tell you why. The requirement of warning before shooting cannot always blanketly be applied. What does that mean? So if an officer turns a corner and someone fires at him and there's a gun battle at the very offset, you cannot expect a warning to be given in that certain situation. 99.9% of the time, we're going to be able to do that from cover or however else as we try to de-escalate, but it's not a 100% kind of thing. The other is the use of force continuum. Use of force continuum goes back a long time. And that used to be the standard that people tried to hold to was, if subject does A, we do B, we do C, we do E. What we found was, and what we started to find was, that it didn't match the Supreme Court ruling of Graham versus Connor, which established objective reasonableness as the pivot point and the decision-making on that officer on what force that they will use. So while we do not have a continuum, we do have very strict guidelines of what is proper in use of force and when you can escalate and use other types of force. And that's going to be in a policy that we'll talk about in a couple minutes. But I want to get that out because we did have a couple questions about that one. Another question under policy is what systems are currently in place to hold police officers accountable for what they do on and off duty? And off duty is just as important as on duty. We have a number of different processes, including an early warning system. Early warning system is something that we have in place. Every complaint is logged. Every use of force is logged in this early warning system. The early warning system tracks not only individual officers, so we can track if they're getting numerous complaints or they're using force more than the average officer. It also tracks patterns. So if we're seeing a certain type of complaint, or if we're seeing a certain type of escalation or force, we can look at it as a holistic view to see if there's a training issue, to see if there's other things that we need to look at. So those are just two of the current things that we have. But we also do yearly reviews, and we do yearly reviews of our use of force. We do yearly reviews of our citizen complaints or administrative complaints. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a short bit. But we do our yearly reviews, and we look at patterns, trends, and again, individual officers to make sure that everybody is in line, everybody is within policy. So we do hold ourselves accountable. And some points where you'll see when we talk about complaints, we hold ourselves accountable more often than citizens as far as complaint processes go. Next question is, additionally, do all city police officers have body cameras and are required to have them on in the field? Yes, we've had body cameras for going on 5 years now, I believe, 5-6 years. We were one of the first in the area to get them, and we saw the importance of them that we just went ahead and implemented the system. We didn't walk it in. We didn't take it piece by piece. We had everybody get on board with it. We had everybody, all the patrol officers have body cameras. And additionally, anybody who's put into a patrol duty position must have a body camera on so that we can hold them accountable. And it's been a wonderful addition for us. It's great for not even reviewing incidents and use of force. It also helps mitigate and investigate citizen complaints and improve training. So if we review a use of force or we review an incident, we can, or a pursuit even, we can look at things and say, here's what we did very well. Here's what we did pretty well, but we could do it better. So again, as I said before, we are never going to be perfect, but we will always strive to be better. One of the questions, an interesting one, can the general public review the police union contract? Yes, it is a public document and it is on the city's website under its own tab. What criteria have to be met for an officer to use their weapon? That goes along with our use of force policy, which is policy 405, and it is available on our website. Now, one of the positive things to come out of this conversation is we put them on our website and we know what we're looking at, but we start to realize the public may not be able to navigate that as easily. So we have tasked someone to go in there and make them labeled, make them more easily found by the public so that they can see our policies. And once again, I know this is a limited format, so if you see something in our policy you have a question about, please do not hesitate to reach out. Again, talked about use of force policy. It's the same policy 405. We are trained on that. One of the questions are, when are we trained on these procedures? We review our use of force every year before range qualification, before we requalify with our firearms. That is a state mandate, not only good practice, but it's a state mandate that we must review and test upon our use of force policies so that the officers, again, are drilled in, trained, and know what's expected of them when they do use force. How are complaints against officers handled? And who is responsible for these complaints? So it depends on the type of complaint. The complaints are handled for the most part internally. There's the lower level, okay, Officer X did not shave today. Officer X uniform was not presentable. Small level things are handled down at the patrol level. If there's something that is a larger policy violation, then it is brought up and bumped up and issued internal affairs numbers and investigated by our internal affairs division. If it is something that for some reason is egregious, may result in a termination, or for other reasons, we feel it necessary to put it outside to another agency. We do utilize Prince George's County quite a bit. They've been very helpful with us, and they do investigate our officer discharges and weapons. So they've been very helpful with that. We do escalate it and put it outside, or if we deem that there's an investigation that may have a conflict of interest within the department, we will put that to an outside agency. Let's see. If an officer is found to have willfully violated the rights of a citizen or departmental policy, what disciplinary actions are taken? We do have a disciplinary matrix, and that matrix will determine what the punishment is for a first offense, second offense, a third offense, depending on what kind of violation it is. So it really, I can't give you a specific answer on that. It's going to depend on the type of violation, where it falls in the matrix, and the severity of it. How many complaints of excessive force have been filed against Bowie Police Department officers in the past 5 years? Of those reports, how many have resulted in disciplinary action? We talked a little bit about the process and what training do the officers receive in de-escalation tactics. So let's start with the beginning. I'm going to have to shuffle some papers here, if you'll pardon me. I don't have 5-year stats, but what I do have is 2019 stats right in front of me. And for sustained cases for 2019, we had 3 citizen complaints sustained, and we had 16 administrative complaints sustained. And what is the difference? The difference is 3 citizen complaints means they were initiated by a citizen complaint. The administrative complaints are internal complaints, and these are ones that we police ourselves. We review body footage, body camera footage, or we review something else and we find policy violation. So these are the ones that we police ourselves. And as you can see, the vast majority are administrative complaints versus external citizen complaints. So one of the things that we really try to do is police ourselves so nobody else has to. We want to fix these problems internally before they affect somebody externally. So we really do try to stay on top of that. What training do officers receive in de-escalation tactics? Actually, I'm going to hold on to that and put it in training. But I've got one more. How soon must a use of force be reported? Use of force here are taken very, very seriously. The minute a use of force is used or activated, the command staff get a text, an emergency call, text, email, whatever. We don't answer first. So if it's middle of the night and we have a taser deployment, we get that notification. That use of force report is due at the end of that officer's shift. After that officer does the use of force report, it's reviewed by the sergeant, reviewed by the lieutenant, and then kicked up to the captain for final review to make sure that it was appropriate, necessary, and followed policy guideline. And if it did not, then it shoots into that other category of complaints that we talked about, administrative, and it's issued IED numbers and a full investigation on top of the initial report and review is conducted. I will say, and excuse me for flipping papers, but yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. While you're shuffling, we have several questions that have come in, a couple related to policies, so, and then some related to training and other things. So when you are ready, I will read them for you.
I will continue to flip while you ask me.
Okay. This one says, is there any non-police group or citizen board available to review police misconduct?
We, at this time, do not have a civilian review board. What we do is have the citizen-led public safety committee, and they review policy, they review procedures. But at this time, we do not have a citizen review board strictly for police complaints.
Okay, this one is, why is it so difficult to convict police officers for clear violations of the law? What policies and legislation are protecting them?
Woof. Okay, so that is kind of a hornet's nest that we have a very small piece of. We are a very small bee in that nest. So there's something called the LEOBR, which is the Law Enforcement's Bill of Rights, which is Maryland statute. And Maryland statute that defines due process that involves investigations on a sworn officer. And what you have to realize is that there's a process, and the process is sometimes slow and sometimes arduous. There's dual tracks. So if we have something that an officer does, and it's possibly criminal in duty. So there are two tracks. There's the criminal track, which is usually handled, and there's a different administrative approach to each one because the administrative investigation has different rules of engagement and different things that are allowable versus a criminal investigation. So what often happens is investigators have to wait for the criminal investigation to run its course. And then once the criminal investigation is done, then the administrative starts. So if they determine a crime was not committed, you still have to look at was policy broken and to what extent was policy broken. But those two investigations do not run simultaneously. They go one at a time, the criminal first and then the administrative. As far as why it is so difficult, I can't say overlapping and in general because it's going to depend on the particular details of that case. A lot of it is based upon case law. A lot of it is based upon the circumstances of what happened on that particular scene, what that officer saw, did, experienced on that scene. And again, as I said in my opening statement, there's a very, very big difference between discharging a weapon or using force on someone in some situations versus what happened in Minneapolis, which is a totally different indefensible act with absolutely no matter how you look at it, there's absolutely no way to even begin to justify what happened. That's not always the case when you get into other circumstances where there may be weapons involved, another fight or anything else that may go into the decisions whether to criminally prosecute or not. And that, again, that's barring the administrative. And I know that was a long and kind of convoluted answer, but there's a lot going on in that question that does not allow for pinpoint precise answers.
Okay, thank you. Before you move on to training, let me just ask this question that relates to something going on at the state level. The Bowie Police Department has developed a positive relationship with the community that it serves. With that in mind, the Speaker of the House of Maryland has announced that the House of Delegates is forming the work group to address police reform and accountability in Maryland. It is scheduled to meet in the weeks ahead. Will representatives of the Bowie PD participate or assist this work group in its efforts to develop appropriate legislation and policy?
Yes, I can honestly say yes. And I won't say that based upon the great work we do in Bowie, but I will say that based upon I am currently on the board of the Maryland Chiefs as first vice president, and I was involved heavily with the Maryland legislative session last year. And I take the reins of president for the Maryland Chiefs in September. So I imagine my sleeves will be rolled up and sitting at the table, trying to move legislation forward that makes sense for everybody.
Okay, thank you. And when you move on to training, there are a couple more questions about that.
All right, thank you. The last thing I want to touch on when we talk about use of force is that in 2019, we responded to 36,287 incidents. Out of those 36,287 incidents, there were 272 arrests. Out of those 272 arrests, force was used in 2.2 of those arrests. So 272 arrests with only 2.2% of force. We can always try to get that lower, but I think that's a reasonable and respectable number. I will also say that our use of force went down 57% from the previous year. So we do, and we'll get to the training, but we do stress de-escalation. We do stress our communication skills. I know as a road troop, I've talked to more people in handcuffs than I ever had to use force on. And that is the way that the officers in Bowie approach it as well. We rely very heavily on our communication skills. I ran on a call about 2-3 weeks ago with an officers for a fight, and I can't say how impressed how impressed I was with their communication skills and their de-escalation skills that they used before arresting one of the participants. So I'm going to move into training. Una, did you want to wait and see if I answer it, or you want to give it to me up front?
I'll just wait and see if you answer it.
Okay. We talked about de-escalation. So our officers are trained and in de-escalation. It's part of some of our in-service, is part of our constant training. And we have officers assigned to each squad that have had an even higher level of training in de-escalation. So we're always training, but there's some that went to specialized schools outside of what we've given the other officers, and we've assigned them to each of our squads. Some of them have been specialized in mental illness de-escalation and some other things. One of the things I will say about training is that we are very, very cognizant of it. We realize the importance of it. And I'm very thankful that our city manager recognizes the importance of it as well. So we are constantly looking for training opportunities. Every time there's a national incident or there's something that went wrong in a department, we take that incident, we analyze it. We analyze it, we turn it upside down, sideways. We have conversations, whether it's a straight use of force issue or a racially tinged issue. We will sit in the break room. We will sit in the training room, now 6 feet apart, but we will sit in the training room and we will hammer it out, and we will look at it from each side, and we will determine what training we need to do to make sure that we learn from somebody else's mistakes and that we do our best to avoid making that same mistake. So that being said, what does the training process for our officers consist of? Does this include diversity training? Besides outside the academy time, when an officer gets cut loose from the academy, he or she reports here, and we put them through an FTO period. Our FTO time exceeds that of the recommended time by MPTC, or the Training Commission. On top of that, our in-service, Maryland Training Police Commission requires a minimum of 18 hours of in-service each year. We train upwards of 48 hours per officer sometimes. It really depends on what the topics are, what we feel is needed, and what the officers feel we needed or is needed. We take great pride in listening to our officers, their training needs, because they're out there doing the job. If they see deficiency or they see something that they need to improve upon, they'll come and tell us, and we'll make sure that we get that training and talk about it so that we are the best trained that we can be. Because one of our biggest liability does fall in training. And the lack of training can be detrimental not only to the officer's safety, but to the community that they serve. So we take our training very, very seriously. What do we do that ensures that officers are properly trained to deal with people with disabilities? We have, again, mental illness training. We have partnered with autism organizations to teach our officers how to deal with people with intellectual disability or other kinds of disabilities. So that we do really take that seriously. Does the department receive any implicit bias training? Yes, we have sent them through that at the University of Maryland with Dr. Marsh, and that's a fantastic program, and we appreciate them reaching out to us and including us in that. So we do take that very seriously. again, training is the hallmark of a quality organization. We can't let our people stagnate. We can't let our people get complacent. And we have to make sure that they're equipped to safely, effectively, and fairly do the position that they've been assigned. And that's all I have on the training component. Una, if you have some other things.
Okay, you've sort of answered this one, but not specifically. The question is, how often is implicit bias training and de-escalation training provided to police officers?
Okay, de-escalation has been yearly. The implicit bias we started this year. So we'll look at the recommended retention and recommended retraining time for that.
Okay. This one is, I'm seeing a lot of officers violating constitutional rights. Are officers given a basic civics course, and is that reinforced throughout the years?
The main, again, we go over search and seizure. We go over everything that all the constitutional amendments that apply to our job. You get the basics and the foundation in the academy. When you come out, your FTO is going to reinforce all of that. What's the difference between a Terry stop and frisk, and a search? There's a difference. You can't just turn people's pockets inside out. There's a difference between a Terry stop search and a true search. So we will make sure that officers understand that. We again do that through training. We do that through coaching and mentoring on the street. If we see an officer doing something that is out of line or outside of what they should be doing policy-wise and constitutional law-wise, we trust our supervisors to correct and our senior officers to correct on scene.
Okay, and this is the last one for now about training. Does the city of Bowie require psychological training for all police officer applicants? If so, is it also required of all officers at some regular intervals? If not, why not? And would you consider doing so? And thank you for having this meeting.
Sure, that is one of the things that has been brought up a couple different times. It is one of the basic hiring tenets and one of the basic hiring obligations that you have to fulfill for your background. So we do believe in that. We do look at folks and make sure that they're doing okay mentally. One of the things that is a big push, has been a big push through the IACP is officer mental health and wellness. Wellness incorporates both the physical wellness and the emotional and mental health. So we do keep track of officers to make sure they're doing all right. If they do need to go take care of themselves, we make sure that they have ample resources. If you are in a traumatic incident, such as a officer discharging their weapon or any kind of other incident, we do require them to go to a screening and a mental health review to make sure that they are dealing with the stress and that they are ready to truly come back to work. There was legislation pending and talk of requiring yearly mental evaluations in the legislative body. It did not gain enough momentum to make it through. I don't even think it came to a vote, but there are pros and cons to that. A lot of the things that we've been talking with our FOP about is trying to find a way that does not have stigma attached to it to allow officers to seek mental guidance or mental health if they need it. We are placed on tremendous amounts of stress just due to the nature of the job, and we want to make sure that we do take care of our officers. But the short answer is they are not required to go to yearly evaluation.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have right now on training. I'd like to switch for just a second, if I could. Mayor Adams, there is a question for you. And the question is Mayor Adams planning to sign President Obama's mayor's pledge?
I think as an individual, as a mayor, everything we do collectively as a council, but as an individual and having talked with the chief, one of the things that we talked about is making sure that we review our use of force, and all of our policies, which fortunately for us, as we're going through this accreditation policy procedure right now, that is going on and that has happened. So from a standpoint of looking at that and making sure to do so, yes, we will be, because I believe the chief and our police department is moving forward to make sure we look at and keep good tabs on what we do when it comes to use of force. And if you go and on the website are the policies, and I think Chief mentioned that all of our citizens, it's very transparent for you to go and see all of the policies that our police department has. And yes, I will sign that because I'm very confident that as we continue to move forward, and it's a process that our police department does initiate now. So yes, I will. Chief, was there anything you want to add?
No, sir, you encapsulated it perfectly. It's something we're already doing. It's like signing the law that says, or an agreement that we're going to close the gate in the backyard when we close the gate on the backyard every day. So we do try to continually review our policies. Part of the CLIA accreditation is that we do our yearly reviews of these policies. As I stated before, we look at incidents across the country and adjust policies as needed based upon current trends, current best practices, and things that other people have found out just don't work. And so we are very cognizant of that.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Before we get into the community policing arena, there's some miscellaneous kind of questions. And one of them I thought would be a good one to ask now, because I think a lot of people have this question. How would you suggest those of us with Black sons and daughters prepare them for the possible interactions with police officers? How do we keep our Black sons and daughters from ending up as the next hashtag? What are your officers prepared to do to protect us?
Una, if you don't mind, I'd like to answer that question.
Go right ahead. Thanks.
As I mentioned before, obviously, as an African-American deputy chief who has a 16-year-old African-American son who's just his driver's license. So I definitely understand the premise of that question. And what I first and foremost say is that, our goal is to treat everyone with equity. One of the things that we talk about often, even in my home, is that the proper way to interact with law enforcement, if you're encountered and stopped on a traffic stop. Obviously, you don't want to make any movements, furtive movements. You want to put the officer at ease as much as possible. So keep your hands in plain sight. So, my suggestion to anyone, not only African Americans, but anyone being stopped by law enforcement, is to, keep your hands on your steering wheel and ask the officer, for clarity before you make any movement. So if the officer asks for your driver's license, if it's something somewhere, inside of your vehicle, just communicate. Say, officer, it's okay. It's in my glove compartment. Is it okay if I get it? Same thing with a registration card. Things of that sort. I think that, being, listening to the questions, looking eye to eye to the officer, answering the questions openly and honestly, I think are all things that, will allow a traffic stop to go smoothly. Remember, with all of our officers, we all have body cameras as well as in-car cameras. So the interaction is being captured. And what we found with our body cameras and in-car cameras is that it tends to improve the behavior on both sides. When people know that an incident is being reported, not only is the officer's behavior improved, but also the citizen's behavior. And that makes for a safer stop and encounter for both parties. So I hope that helps. These are things that we also have a citizens police guide, and I'm sure that the chief will elaborate on that as he gets into the things and the efforts we take to interact with our community and our citizens. But we have a Citizens Police Academy, which is a 10-week program that goes into much detail about the training that our officers are provided, allows our citizens to experience some of that training. And it really goes into those things that we've been discussing tonight: search and seizure, the ethics classes that we talk to officers about and what we teach. They even get to experience some of the judgmental shooting aspects. So there are a lot of different things that is encompassing a lot of resources and partnerships with other law enforcement agencies that partner with us in putting on that Citizens Police Academy. So we welcome, even beyond tonight, we welcome further questions, as well as myself, as well as the chief are open by email or by phone. We'll come out to community meetings as requested to address further concerns. So we're here to serve this community, and we look forward to continue to do that.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Chief. Okay,
And if I could chime in just from a perspective of a parent who raised his son in African-American son and trying to balance the fear of police and oppression with a healthy respect for police. And I think that is one of the major concerns that parents have, especially parents of African-American children. And then when they have to get their child to talk. And it's good to hear what the police are doing. And I know Chief Neski is going to get into this a little bit more when he talks about community policing and what Dwayne Preston talked about in terms of the police academy. But it is important to have that talk with your children and your sons and your daughters about, how to respect the police and respond when you get stopped by the police, but in a way that doesn't instill fear or hatred, because they still have to have healthy respect for the police. And we did this with our son by making sure that in our circle, we had children whose fathers were police officers. So he got to know police officers firsthand. He has a godfather who's a police officer. And so being able to have those partnerships and talk with them directly. And I think, again, when Chief Neski goes into the community policing and being able to develop those relationships, I think is very helpful in being able to maintain that balance and then knowing what their rights are, but also knowing how they need to respond to make sure that they don't escalate a situation as well. So those are just a few things I wanted to mention.
Okay, thank you, Alveda. There's a couple questions here that should be fairly simple to answer, and they have to do with statistics. The first one is, how many 311 calls does Bowie receive a year? We don't actually have a 311 service per se in the city, but we do have a non-emergency number. That's the first question. I see the chief looking through stats to get the number for that. The other one, Deputy Chief, maybe you can answer, is about the demographic makeup of the department.
Sure, and answering, we will reflect the population of the city of Bowie. I believe 54% of the Bowie Police Department is African American, and the city is roughly a little over 50% African American. So I think we not only do we represent the population, we were recognized, and the chief can elaborate on this more. Last year, he was invited to spend some time in London based upon our diversity, based upon our community policing. We were awarded declarations and for that. And I think that speaks highly to the efforts that we've taken to really incorporate and make sure that we reflect the community in which we serve.
Okay. And the last question related to, well, the chief will answer the other one. The third question related to statistics is, how many complaints can an officer receive before they are terminated?
Well, there's a difference between complaints and sustained findings. Oftentimes, there's I'm sorry, I'm trying to get power to my phone because the computer died. There's a difference between complaints and findings of sustained wrongdoing. I'm sorry, you get a picture of my chest there. There's a difference, and it really depends. It could be one complaint and you're terminated because it really depends on the nature of the complaint. If it's sustained, you could have minor violations that takes escalating or progressive discipline, but it really depends on that specific complaint. It could be a one and the complaint was so egregious that you don't represent the values of the department. And we've had incidents where it was one incident for that particular officer who was never had a mark against him, but what he was found sustained of was egregious enough and against our core values that we could no longer have him here. Back to, I don't see the calls. I'm sorry, but I don't have the actual numbers of calls that came through. Only the calls that we responded to which was 36,000 some change. To speak about our diversity, we were part of a DOJ white paper as a best practice in the nation for having a department that reflected its community. And we were very proud of that. And as Deputy Chief alluded to, that kind of led to me being asked to be on a panel for fair and equitable policing, which led me to New York for the first half, and very fortunate enough that I was able to go to London for the second half to talk with not only police chiefs and commanders from other states, but across the world, and looking at best practices on how we should be handling things. The interesting part, as I was telling someone the other day, is over in Britain they have a different. They don't have a constitution. They don't have amendments and everything else. So if you stop somebody and they get searched, there's no in between. Like as I alluded to before, Terry stop is not a full search. That's an officer safety mechanism that allows for the search of weapons, not the search of any other contraband or anything else. If they stopped you in Britain, they empty backpacks and anything else that you might have. And what they found was that they were having the same issues that we were having with disproportionate stops of communities of color. So it was very enlightening. I did learn a lot, and I tried to bring a lot of that back with me to the department. So we average, evidently, I just got a text that we average about 3,000 to 4,000 calls, phone calls a month through the call center. And I think that was what you were looking for, correct?
I think it was an annual thing, but we can figure that out. Thank you. All right, there's a few questions here, more follow-ups to the body camera discussion earlier. Is there a penalty well, first of all, let me ask, in what circumstances are body cameras permitted to be turned off? And then is there a penalty for officers who turn off their body cameras or fail to capture interactions? And then who reviews the camera recordings?
We review the camera reportings just randomly. Supervisors are assigned to randomly review footage from their officers. We review any use of force, any pursuit, any high risk or important incident. The only time that it's a very narrow scope of when they're allowed to turn the cameras off. So if they're interviewing a child, or if there's a sensitive a sexual assault or something like that, they're allowed to make that discretion, but they have to document it with the reasons why. And when I mentioned some of those administrative complaints sustained, a couple of those were for not having their body cameras on during incidents. So there is a penalty, and it's progressive discipline as we move through the discipline matrix.
And Chief, if I could add to that, the way that our discipline process is structured is that the chief has delegated the authority of internal investigations to my authority. So all investigations are conducted under my authority. And based upon the findings of those, I make recommendations to the chief of police for final discipline. As it relates to the administrative investigations that we've encountered, several of the violations were for other incidents, but in investigating those, what we call unreported misconduct, we found instances in which a body camera was not utilized according to policy, which resulted in discipline. Majority of our officers have actually embraced the body cameras because they've realized that in many cases, it's helped clear them of allegations more than indict them on allegations. So most of our officers actually asked for the body cameras. And so we have not traditionally seen a reluctance of the officer to utilize the body camera. In instances when the body camera was not recorded, it was generally a slip of the mind or something because of the intensity of the incident. They just failed to activate the camera upon getting to the scene of a crime.
Okay, this one is kind of the flip side of that. As a follow-up to the question on police interactions, I'm wondering if a passenger or the driver wishes to record the proceedings of a stop or an interaction for their protection, would the officer object?
We have a policy that specifically covers that. That as long as you are not interfering with the ability of the officer to conduct the stop or conduct whatever action he's taking, that is your absolute right to record the officer. And again, we have a policy that covers exactly that.
Okay, that was clear cut. Deputy Chief, I'm going to ask you to answer this one. How do the Bowie police work with the Prince George's County Police in handling incidents and crimes?
I guess I know why you asked me that question. So those that are here, I did not say this during the introduction, but I served with the Prince George's County Police for 21 years and retired as a deputy chief of police before joining the Bowie Police Department. So the one thing I would say is that we have an outstanding working relationship with the Prince George's County Police Department, and I would give some credit to the Prince George's County Police because that was not always the case as it related to working with other agencies. Over the last 10 to 15 years, chiefly when Chief McGall was the police chief for the county, that relationship really blossomed, and it still does so to this day. All of our recruit officers are trained and go through the Prince George's County Police Department Academy. So they're being trained alongside the county officers. So all the officers within Prince George's County are being trained to the same standard. But any request that we need for resources, that is a seamless relationship that exists. All of our commanders have continuous interactions with the commanders of the Prince George's County Police Department, and they support us as well as we support them.
Sorry. Thank you. I want to make sure to leave enough time for community policing, but there are a couple more questions that I'd like to go through. Let's see here. Will you, and if so, how will you change the police culture protecting Blue regardless of how egregious the offense? Who wants to answer that?
Yes, can you repeat the question one more time and then I'll answer?
Sorry, let me, I've lost it. Let me go on to another room. I'll find it again. Sorry.
Got it. Hey, Una, I'm sorry. I inadvertently muted.
Okay.
Trying to get my computer back. The question was, how do we change the culture of protecting Blue?
Correct.
All right. I would say that culture is starting to change itself with some guidance from leadership, because they also understand while there will always be solidarity and there will always be the brother and sisterhood of law enforcement, they also realize that wrong is wrong, and that if you have someone that's doing something that's improper, if someone is doing something that reflects poorly on our department and our profession, it affects everyone. So I think that there's still the perception of the thin blue line as of silence, but I think, and I can speak from myself and from what I've seen in the 28 odd years, and I'll let DC jump in as well. But I think there is not as much of a protect at all cost. If somebody is wrong, somebody is wrong. And when we do a couple of the internals that we've done, the officers know what's right and what's wrong, and they will not stand for desecrating and embarrassing our department and embarrassing our badge.
And just to add on to that, Chief, This is not a new subject that we have discussed. I often have taught the ethics class to the police officers in service. And one of the examples that I use often in that is that it's the officer who uses force's responsibility to be able to articulate and justify why that force was used. It is not for the other officers to try to figure out why the officer used force. It's their job to tell honestly what they saw, what they witnessed based on what they experienced. So, it's my responsibility as the officer using force to not put an officer in a situation where they feel as though they have to cover for my actions. And that's one of the things that we really harp on continually, even since the passing of Mr. Floyd. We've had candid discussions with some of our officers in terms of what we expect them to do if they find themselves in a situation where they believe an officer is using force that's not justified. The old adage and the saying about my brother's keeper, that is a true statement. And yes, we are. We are human, and that's one of the things we do acknowledge. So there are times when adrenaline, emotion, and things of that sort, do come into account. It is in those instances where we expect the other officers to step in, and to intercede when they believe there's a need to do so.
Okay, great. Last question. And folks, I got to tell you, the questions are coming in fast and furious, and I'm trying to sort of pick a good cross section of them to get your concerns and questions answered. But we are not going to be able to get to all of them tonight, that's clear. This one says, does the police department monitor their officers' social media accounts for membership in radical organizations like white nationalists and the KKK?
We do have very strict social media policies. As far as spot checking people's social media posts and organizations, we are not currently actively doing that at this time. We look at it during our background process, and that's one of the things we do is we do a deep scrub into their background and as well as their social media feeds. Usually, if you belong to an organization such as those, you're going to leave some kind of trace prior to your application. It's not something that usually all of a sudden decide that kind of mind frame and that kind of ideology is for you one day. There's always traces. There's always somebody who knows that you've had those kind of inclinations, and we work very hard to do a very thorough background to make sure that is. We are not hiring anybody of questionable character or questionable backgrounds. We have worked short, and we will continue to work short rather than bring a questionable applicant onto the department.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn now to community policing, because a lot of the questions that we got in advance were about that and how the department interacts with the community. The first one, before you get into the ones you had previously, this one is, what is the department's relationship with the neighborhood watch groups?
It's good, but it's evolving. It used to be, the physical presence. We still have some active neighborhood watch organizations that meet in person. But Nextdoor has kind of muscled their way into that and kind of replaced it for good or for bad. Nextdoor is an efficient way to share information, but it's an efficient way to share information locally. There's still some very large shortcomings where we're trying to respond to a neighborhood concern, but it's hard if you're not in that neighborhood, and they don't always let agencies broadcast over different distinct neighborhoods. And as you can probably attest to that, as we see things that start to build, it's tough to try to intervene and try to get that information out. We just have to do a blanket post and hope that that particular neighborhood sees it. So the actual physical neighborhood watches are not as active as they used to be. We still make every effort to keep them as vital as we can. We do our HOA meetings. We do any other community meetings that we can get to try to break that interaction, that communication into the smallest component that we possibly can.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to go back and sort of give a broad overview of community policing, your approach, the different programs you have,
Sure.
and the philosophy of the department for it?
Sure. And as I said before, since the department's inception, we've been a partnership, and we've been hand in hand. And I like to think that everything we've done in our development, in our growth, in our planning, has been based upon community needs and community input. And we continue to do that. We've always tried to reach out. We've got a lot of programs and events that we try to do. We've got our Citizens Academy, which is in it's about to be in its 7th class before COVID came around. But we are very active with that. We have we teach a free women's self-defense class where we put it probably upwards of 600 people through. That is probably one of my favorite activities because it's one-on-one time with residents. It's building trust with residents on an individual basis. I remember a couple years ago going down the Memorial Day parade and just students breaking out into defensive stances and yelling at me as we went down the street. And those are the kind of words of mouth things that go a long way to building the trust. We have, of course, our National Night Out. We've been nationally recognized every year since 2007 when we first started participating in it. We've got our again the Citizens Academy. We do our HOA meetings. We have a Cop for a Day event every year that's very popular, where families come out and see what it's like to do some of the tasks that we do, or they think we do on a daily basis, which is traffic stops and foot chases, and we put them through a shoot don't shoot scenario, so they kind of get the stresses of and judgment that we have to use on a daily basis. We have so many great things. We have Coffee with a Cop, where we go hang out in the Starbucks or Panera or wherever, and just people come and talk to us. And one of the things and one of our greatest strengths is that I would say informality with the public. We are approachable. I like to think we're approachable, that we'll just stop and have a conversation. Doesn't have to be about anything. But people are also comfortable enough to bring problems to us and say things to us that we may not want to hear. One of the things that, again, when we see these incidents that happen nationally, especially after the Michael Brown, and there were threats against law enforcement, and you had these things that were coming up out of anger. We sat down and talked to our officers. Look, how does that make you feel? We talk about, look, people are angry. They're justifiably angry. They're angry at our profession. That doesn't mean they're angry at you, but they're angry at our profession. So take the time, always be tactically safe, but take the time to listen. Take the time to have patience. People may vent. One of the things that we really, 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 truly are blessed to be in Bowie, because it is such a great supportive community. And, they, on the whole, they recognize that what's happening nationally isn't necessarily reflective of what's happening locally. And we enjoy having those hard conversations. We'll go back to some Bowie State protests that they had, and we met a lot of fine young people who wanted to make a difference. And we sat and had some great conversations. And we had those kind of conversations because there's trust, and they were comfortable saying things that they didn't think they should say to us or could say to us without some kind of feedback or drawback, a fireback on them. And we understand that not everyone, we have the philosophy of, we know that not everyone is going to like the police. And we are going to be hard pressed to change somebody's worldview. But we can change the point of view of that one person about you. So if someone walks away going, I hate the police, but that guy was all right, then to me, that's a win. Because you're never going to change somebody's worldview that came to them through numerous contexts, numerous feeds, numerous experiences. You're not going to change that all in one bite. There's the old adage about, how do you need an elephant? It's one bite at a time. So we have to realize that and just keep working and keep ourselves open and keep ourselves engaged with the community and do our best to turn this thing around.
All right, we're going to move into sort of the free-for-all category here. There's a little bit of everything.
All right.
This question.
Una, can I have the court's indulgence and knock some of the questions out of our community basket?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. All right. So one of the things is, do you have any remarks for citizens of Bowie who are persons of color who have heightened fear for their lives after the events that happened to George Floyd? Persons that fear walking at dusk or jogging in their neighborhood or walking their dogs because of fear of being misidentified or racially profiled. We have very strict and strong policies on racial profiling. Now, what I will say is even more disheartening is when you see the case as in Central Park, where the bird watcher, where the young lady used his race as a weapon and used the police as a weapon against him, which is, to me, it's shameful. So this is where we have to trust and we have to build that confidence that if something like that does happen, that the officers are going to be professional, the officers are going to be open, because Lord knows everything is not what it seems when we get that call. We get the call, we take the information based upon that call, but then we have to see for ourselves when we get to the scene. So my advice is, again, just be polite, have the conversation to find out why we're there, how we got there. And oftentimes that will help alleviate some of that fear, but at the same time, it's a very tough thing to put your head around and to live with. So it's up to us as and our officers to come at that approach, with an open mind, with an open heart, find out what happened, and have that conversation to try to de-escalate those kinds of situations. Dwayne, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, Chief, I think you answered it perfectly.
All right, I should quit now. What events are in place for the community to get to know the police and get to know the community? We mentioned some of them. We are always looking for new ways to interact with our community. Be that at school events, any kind of event. We are always open to ideas, and we're always brainstorming to try to find out what the next big thing is once these restrictions get lifted. Is there anything that the community can do to support the police department during this time? It is a hard time for all law enforcement as well. The news show a certain side, and we know that there are many good people in law enforcement. Thank you for what you do. We do appreciate that. Again, on the whole, we have a community that knows us, and we have a community that understands who we are and what we stand for, and doesn't paint us with the giant national brush. So the only thing that I could ever ask of anybody is to trust us, to give us the benefit of the doubt for at least that first hot second or two, and let things come out. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is, if it's ours, we will own it. If we make a mistake, we will own it. I have the theory that you will get more trust and support from your community by owning a mistake than you ever will by doing everything right every single day. Because we are human and we are going to make a misstep here and there. So, please trust us that we will always try our best and that we will own any mistake that might come out. What are our rights in regards to an arrest? And what do we do if those rights aren't met in the moment or after the fact? And that's going to tie into something that someone asked: what can you do if you see somebody that is in peril while being arrested, much like Mr. Floyd? Neither one of these answers that I'm about to give are going to make many people feel good, and I'm sorry. But I try to be honest as I can. If you're stopped, if you disagree with what the officer is doing, I have a little phrase: comply, then complain. Comply, then complain, and it may go against everything in your gut to comply, but comply, then complain, because on the scene, if you don't comply, it's going to escalate further. So comply, ask for the supervisor. We will sort it out when the supervisor gets there. And again, if we're wrong, we're wrong, and we'll own it. The other piece of that, if you see something happening to somebody else, the gut instinct is to jump in and do something. Again, you're not going to like my answer, and I'm sorry, but it's the safest answer. And that is record if you can. Call for 911, tell them what's going on, ask for a supervisor. Let them know that you're calling for a supervisor. Don't try to intercede, because when you intercede, no matter how good your intentions are, you may not know the entire story. You may not know exactly what's going on, but at the very minimum, you're going to be seen as a threat, or you're going to be seen as someone who's interfering and obstructing with what is a probability a lawful arrest. The force may seem excessive, but you're going to get caught up in that, and that's going to complicate and escalate the situation even farther. And I know that's not a beautiful, easy answer to take, but it's unfortunately the safest way to proceed. We talked about events. We talked about community strategies. Any concerns for the rapid spread of the coronavirus during this time? One of the things that this is absolutely the worst time for it's never a good time for this to happen. Let me start with there, but the kindling had been laid, and the police department law enforcement we have the amazing knack of being that final tipping point on things. And we've had the COVID pandemic. We've had the stress of people losing their jobs. We've had the economic turmoil. We've had people quarantined. We've had people stressed, anxious, angry, fearful. And along comes, the horrible incident with Mr. Floyd, which just erupted this needed conversation, but unfortunate the way it came about. And the whole point of that is, Corona didn't go anywhere. It's still out there. All the marchers, all the protesters, the fuel and the passion is so high that Corona goes to the side, and the message has to be heard. But Corona is still out there, and it's hard to distance. All you can do is keep taking the precautions, and we'll see where it takes us. This was an interesting question that I felt needed answered. The question is, when you see a Black man, what comes to mind? And that's a difficult answer on so many different levels. Because when I see a Black man, I see a human being. I see another man. I see someone who has the same right to live, thrive, and flourish as I do. But if you be completely honest, as I always try to be, now there's a subtext to this, as far as, you see someone who has been, historically subject to inequities and historically subject to disparities. And so, we start to define ourselves and look at each other differently, and I hope in a more compassionate way. But I thought it was a very simple question that had a fairly complicated answer. And I don't know if I did it justice, because it is such a complicated topic.
Chief, if I could add, and just be very candid, in terms of some of the discussions that you and I have, I think you alluded to it earlier, is when we as the command staff have some very pointed discussions about incidents that have occurred. And one of the things that the chief and I often do is we discuss things that happen on a daily basis. And obviously, while we both may be bald, but I think there's some distinct differences in our appearance, which we can all agree upon. But there are certain instances, and the chief and I say this with all sincerity, and I'm being completely honest in this encounter, that if the chief and I both put on a hooded sweatshirt and walk down the street together, And we responded to an incident involving, police department backup officers that we were not familiar with. We all agree that with certainty that there's a more of a 90+% chance that I will get encountered and challenged prior to he being the assumption that he was the law enforcement officer and I was not. That's just a reality of the society we live in. So it's unfortunate, but that's being very candid. But we also have to be aware of that. And so those are the kind of things that we discuss openly, honestly. Those are the things that we try to, as we relate back to the implicit bias training and questions, those are the kind of different things that we all have different perceptions and experiences based upon our upbringing and our experiences in life that drive our decisions. It is our job to measure those, it's our job to manage those, and we're all human. And so as we uphold the oath of office, we have to deal with those things and wrestle with those things on a daily basis. And so, that's just being completely honest and transparent because as I stated before, we're all human and we all have frailties. We're trying to work through those to serve the community because that's the job that we signed up to do.
Exactly. And one of the things that we try to emphasize is my conversation with my young son about law enforcement was much different than Dwayne's conversation with his son about law enforcement and what happens if you are encountered by law enforcement. And I another kind of saying is you don't treat everybody exactly the same, but you treat everybody fairly. And what I mean by that is I have to recognize the background of where someone's coming from. I have to try to understand them and I have to empathize with them and put myself in their shoes. So if I was coming at somebody and if I put myself across from myself when I'm talking to them, how do I come across? What assumptions are they making of me based upon past experience and social upbringing and everything else? So that's one of the things we always have to keep in mind, which is why that was such a simple yet complicated question for me to wrap my bald head around.
And if I could just make a comment, and again, Chief Neske, I want to thank you for your leadership, for your transparency, and for your accessibility. But to piggyback on the conversations that you all are having, we have had these conversations many times in the past, and it goes back to the problem that we stated in the beginning. And that's the problem of systemic racism. And then a lot of these other actions come out of that bigger problem. But if you don't know people for who they are, then you tend to treat people for what you see. And that is the initial group identity. And so really to be able for us to move beyond that, when you're talking about a prescription for moving forward, how do we change that? The systemic racism that we have is a twofold problem. One, racism is taught to individuals. You can't unteach that behavior, but what you can do is give people a bigger experience that carries more weight than the previous experiences and help them to develop a broader perspective so that they are not limited to the initial perceptions that they have been taught or the initial information that they have been taught. But then the other part of it is what you all are doing in the police force to address the systemic issues, to in terms of making sure that the policies that you have, the practices that you have put in place are in holding people accountable, are addressing those systemic issues. And this is not a thing where you just send somebody to training and it's one and done. There was a question that came up, well, it's good that you all have had the University of Maryland training, but what else, what other kind of training is there? And I know that your department does training on an ongoing basis, but it's not just that, it's also getting to know people in the community, the members, the citizens and residents as individuals, because you are less likely to treat someone that someone that you have a relationship with, and use excessive force against that person, or allow those perceptions that you may have of other people in that group to overtake you when you have a relationship with that person, when you know that person on an individual level. And so this is a problem that we all have to come together as a community to tackle. We can't be silent on it. We have to speak out. We have to seek relationships with people who don't look like us, who may have different beliefs than we have. And I thank you for saying that you're accessible, you're open, that you are, people can come to you and ask you questions, but we need to have mentorships involved. And I think that and we need to have these conversations that we're having right now. I think that this is one of many of the conversations that we will have moving forward in the future. I know we're about out of time today, but I just want to thank everyone also for your comments and your questions. And again, we are planning on continuing to have these kinds of conversations moving forward.
And I'm very glad you mentioned the word relationship, because one of the things that I'm so proud of my officers for, it's not just their relationship with the community at large, it's relationships with people that may be breaking the law on a regular basis. You see them interact with, a guy who likes to break into cars, or somebody who's just not on the right path. And it's not a confrontational relationship all the time. It's the same thing, if you break into a car Tuesday, and we may even scuffle on Tuesday, I see you on Friday, that doesn't mean we're going to scuffle or you're going to do something wrong. It's I recognize I recognize that you tend to stray on the other side of the line sometimes, but we still have that conversation on Friday after we had an encounter on Tuesday. And that is how you build your reputation on the street. And that's how you build your reputation in the community, is how you treat people on that individual basis. And we stress this as well. Your career is built one person at a time. Your reputation is built one person and one encounter at a time. And it's very, very important that we have a relationship with everybody, not just the ones we see in the HOA meetings, or not just the ones we see, at functions, but with the people we interact with on the street. You have to build those stepping stones and that foundation for when you see that person again. Because especially if you're someone who may be on the other side of the line from time to time, you're going to see that person again. And they're going to remember how you treated them, and if you were fair to them or not. You're wrong, but if I treated you fair, they're going to remember that. And it's the same thing with back in the day when I was on the street. If you were with somebody and you encountered somebody, and whatever that encounter was, you're going to see them again, and you can tell if they don't run or they don't puff up when you come near them. And you can have that conversation. What are you up to? Okay, good. Hey, man, don't let me get any calls on you. Did you got your court date? You're all fixed up. Good. Let's squash this and let's move on. And that's how the officers do that extremely well here. And I've seen it in action that, they know who the players are, but they have, almost relationships with them as they deal with them. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
No, after you, Chief. No, you finish. Go ahead.
I'll just have two more on the community side, and then move into the miscellaneous. So if you've got something you'd like to add, please.
I simply want to follow up with all that you're saying and how positive this is for us to have these conversations. And I think it's really important, something you kind of touched on, and that is we need to get more of our young people engaged with our diversity committee, with our public safety committee. Please encourage, our young people to have that opportunity, to have that interaction with you and with the committees, because I think that goes back to that familiarity, being able to become familiar with who you are. Encourage everyone to try and listen to that chief chat, because it's informative. But I think if we support our diversity committee, we support our public safety committee, and really get our young people, when the opportunities are there, to just come out and be a part of that, I think that goes such a long way to them seeing how different we are as a community. And what I mean by that, how we are engaged together to make sure that we represent each other and the love and respect we have for each other. And I think it is a positive and a very powerful thing to be engaged. And our young people want to be engaged, and we just need to encourage them. Make sure you become a part of it. Make sure that you engage with our committees, because there's so much you can learn, and there's a comfort zone that can be developed there, not only for them, but for our police department and all of our agencies. And thank you all for the way you've addressed it. And I'll turn it back over to you, Chief.
Thank you. And I'll also say, I'll put a call out right now. If you are involved in a youth organization and there's an opportunity to us to be involved. We have an Explorers post that we're very active with. But if you have a youth organization that you have a few minutes that you'll give up to us, we will be there. We'll be happy to talk about whatever topic you want, however uncomfortable it might be, because there's a lot of questions on especially our young people's minds that they have never had the opportunity to talk to an officer and ask direct questions that may have uncomfortable answers. So I've got two more things, and then we'll hopefully get some other stuff done. So I got a question of what percentage of Bowie Police Department's leadership and supervisory positions are held by people of color? I will say 8 of 9 sergeants are persons of color, and 4 of 7 of our command staff are persons of color. So back to the original point, we are very diverse. It is one of our greatest strengths, and we're pretty proud of that. And what makes me even more proud is that it happened fairly organically. We hired the best people. We screened, and we had some great applicants, and it kind of gelled. When the DOJ asked me how we became so diverse, I said, I don't know. And I'm not going to say I had a secret formula and I can solve the problems of the world. But they came and they spent time with us and looked at our policies, talked to the officers, and liked what they saw. So we ended up in the white paper. My last comment are on the questions I have. What do we plan on doing for handling any future protests that may occur in the city, so that protesters and business owners alike can feel heard and safe? One of the things that we've always done, and we will continue to do, is reach out to organizers that feel they want to have a voice and have a protest of some kind, or demonstration or whatever, and make sure that we are involved, supportive, and we can facilitate a safe way to be heard. And we did that, back when Bowie State had a march after the Michael Brown incident in Ferguson. We had the initial march, and then we actually had another meeting, and we did a forum built upon that. And that's part of the relationships that we talk about. All we have to do is get a foot in the door someplace, and you'll be hard pressed to get rid of us. We want to be there and share information and continue to build a relationship, because it's almost like the jungle gym. One bar leads to the next, and we're just going to keep moving forward. But we got to get that first rung before we can move further down the line. And Una, that's all I have on my questions. Do you have some cleanups?
Just a few miscellaneous ones. We talked a bit about the Public Safety Committee and the Diversity Committee. If anyone's interested in joining those committees, they can contact our city clerk with an email of interest, and she will invite you to attend one of the meetings. Hopefully soon we'll be doing that in person again, but some of the committees are doing virtual meetings right now. And her email address is ahernandez@cityofbowie.org. There's also a whole section on the website about city committees that describes them, if you might be interested in something else. And now these last two.
Can I say something quickly?
Sure.
Thank you. Just to follow on what you just said, is that I know all the committees are able to, or are open to the public. And for the Public Safety Committee, we invite public, and we frequently have people that come in and participate in the Public Safety Committee and ask questions if we have a vote, unfortunately, they may not be able to vote, but they're there and they can ask any question that they want to ask. And one of the things that I think myself and the other members of the Public Safety Committee are very fortunate about is that we have very active participation from the supervisory staff of the police department, especially the chief, deputy chief, the captains, the lieutenants, and even down to the officers that come and work with us. We have some very, very hard and very candid discussions, but they're all very professional discussions. And they're all aimed at providing the safety and garnishing communication and building public trust in what we do in the city and what we do as a community to ensure safety. So please, again, it's been said a couple of times, the mayor said it and others, become involved, participate, come and listen, come and hear us and talk to us. And I think that these type forums are invaluable in getting that community spirit out, getting the communication out and building on that communication to make a better Bowie. And we have a great Bowie already.
Thank you, Del. I think Elvita, I see her nodding. She and I would say the same thing about the diversity committee. Come out, join us, listen to the discussions, get involved in some of the events that we sponsor. And the more people that are involved, the more diverse the perspectives are, and the more we can accomplish together. Okay, these last two questions, and like I said, we're not getting to all of them. These are pretty simple ones. Are police required to live in the city? And I don't know if you should read anything into this, but who hires and fires the police chief and deputy chief? And do you have to live in the city as well?
Wow, thanks. Well, first of all, there is no requirement. There is a perk of being able to use your car on and off duty if you live in the city. We have, I want to say the last count I had was 12 or 13 that do live in the city, but that could be an old number. There are pluses and minuses to that. And I will try to keep it relatively short. The pluses, of course, is you live in the community where you police. The minuses are you live in the community where you police. And that just means that you go to the store and you see somebody you locked up while you're with your kids, picking up a bag of peas. So there's that. But the other piece of that is if you have a requirement to live in the city, you risk missing fantastic applicants that just happen to have a financial or a family situation that is not conducive to moving into the city. And living at Bowie. Not that Bowie's a wonderful place to live. It is. It's a great community. But the fact is that they may have family where they live, or they may not be in the position to move. So you may miss out on some very, very good applicants if you narrow your pool. Especially when it's not like you have to live in the county, and the county's a very large place. We're not that large, so we're really, really narrowing the pool. I will say that we have a lot of local folks that became Bowie police officers. We've got a little clique inside the department that all went to Bowie High School. Some of them had lockers next to each other, I guess. But so we do have ties to the community, and not all the people that have those great ties and went to high school, live in Bowie for reasons that are personal to them. It was just time to live someplace else, or it could be family matters or anything else. So while there are positives, there's also some limitations to that. The deputy chief answers to me, and I answer to the city manager, and city manager has the hire fire capabilities for both of us. The definition of a chief's job is if you need a chief's job, you shouldn't have a chief's job because it doesn't always work out for whatever reasons, political or anything else. The life of a chief can be short-lived sometimes. But we understand that, and if you have the passion to do the job, then you do the job and you don't worry about the other piece. My thought at the end of the day is you do the right thing. You rarely go wrong. And if something happens that I don't control, it's just part of life. It's nothing personal. As far as there is no requirement to live inside the city for either myself or the deputy chief.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Okay, before I ask the mayor and the chief to make just closing out comments, I have a few announcements and one more message to read. This one is from County Council Chair Todd Turner. It says, thank you, Mayor Adams, Chief Neske, Deputy Chief Preston, and my good friends Del Billings and Elvita Dixon as chairs of the Public Safety and Diversity Committees for hosting tonight's virtual town hall. On behalf of the Prince George's County Council, we share the pain, anger, and need to express ourselves as a result of the unlawful act against George Floyd and others. Please see the County Council's statement in response to these events, and we stand in solidarity with the city of Bowie and its residents. Thank you. So thank you, Todd, for that. Just an announcement, and somebody asked this, and I'm sorry, I should have announced it at the very beginning. This meeting is recorded, and it was broadcast live on the government channel and also on our website. Tomorrow, it will be on the website as a video on demand, and you can watch it again there if you wanted, or tell others that weren't on the call tonight. It will also be broadcast on the government channel next week, several days, I believe Monday, Thursday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. And then the last thing, several times people talked about the chief chat tonight. And I just wanted to tell you how you could access that. The chief does it at least once a month, sometimes more. It's on the police department's Facebook page. We also share it on the city's regular general Facebook account and put links on Twitter and Instagram. I really encourage you to listen to him. He is speaking directly to you, and it's usually in response to the kind of things that whatever is hot in the community at the time. So it's timely and it's direct, and I encourage you to listen to them. And the last thing I wanted to just mention is that I've lived in Bowie for a long time, and one of my favorite things about this community is how involved people are and how they connect with each other in good times and in bad. And they're active. We are not bashful. We're outspoken. And in this environment, in the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd and others recently, it means that a lot of you are reaching out to each other through social media and other means to grieve and to connect with each other and to organize some events to give you a voice and an outlet for your frustration and your sadness. So I'm just going to list a couple of those. I'd encourage you to go onto social media where you can see there's a lot of discussions. It's kind of fluid, but starting Friday night, there is a silent protest remembrance kind of a thing where you're invited to stand on your front porch and light a candle between 9 and 9:30 in remembrance of George Floyd. Saturday morning at City Hall, a group is organizing a silent vigil in his memory. There's another group that is talking about walking from around the movie theaters down to Allen Pond, where there's a prayer circle at 1 o'clock. And then at 4 o'clock, several of the council and the chief will be involved in a community vigil at Allen Pond. And several different members of the community are involved in that effort. Those are only a few of the ones going on, but I encourage you to check on social media and talk to your neighbors about those to get the complete list. And like I said, things are still changing and new things are popping up. With that, I would like to thank you all for participating tonight. A lot of questions remain unanswered. We will let you know how we're going to deal with that. And I thank you for being here tonight. With that, I'd like to turn to the chief and then to the mayor to finish this out tonight. Thank you very much.
All right, finally. All right, Una, first I'd like to say thank you, Una, for moderating this. I know it's like herding cats and when things, I get kicked off and my computer dies. So I appreciate the professionalism and flexibility in organizing this. I wish we didn't have to have the talk, period. And I wish we didn't have to have this talk, especially in this kind of forum, and that we could be face to face. But we live in the world that we live in, and it's our job to make it better for the next generation. And I was on the phone today with a 16-year-old that wanted to try to do something to commemorate Mr. Floyd's life and to move things forward. And one of the things that I'm not speaking for anybody else on this panel, but we have a lot of time, more time behind us than we do ahead of us. So it's incumbent upon us to have these conversations, to engage our young people and put it on their shoulders to move the ball forward and continue the work that we're doing. The wheel of social justice has been slow to turn. And for every quarter turn we take, we seem to lose a quarter turn to some kind of travesty or inequity or just culturally embedded racism. And it is what it is. And it's our job to start working together and changing perceptions and opening dialogue. And we in the Bowie Police Department stand ready to do that. What we do not stand ready to do is condone or accept anything less than fair and equitable policing. And that is the only thing that this community and this nation deserve. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you especially to our citizens for joining us this evening and for the questions. And I want to thank all the panelists and everyone from the city staff and everyone who put this together. I think one of the things we all understand and know that this is an issue, as some have said already, we've been fighting since the beginning of our nation. You know, the threat to driving black, being profiled, it's real. I think what many saw recently brought it to the forefront of so many people's conscience. You know, and it wasn't just a black issue; it was an American issue. It's a community issue. It's a human issue. It's about who we are as human beings. I talk about that because my daughter, who's no longer with us, I've had to have that conversation with her, and I've had to share with her when she's been with other black men, young men, and what they had to go through, and what she's gone through as well. And it's not just limited to black men. Let's be candid. It's about people of color. It's about being marginalized. I'm proud of the way our police force and our fellow citizens conduct themselves. I just ask that, you know, as I said a little early, we don't let people, you know, fan the flames of divisiveness amongst us. You know, we can be that microcosm, that example to the nation of what it can really be to be diverse, from everything from not just our backgrounds, but our faith and all those things that who we are. And we can show everyone what it's like to get along, what it is to talk, because that's where it starts. It's that conversation. It's making sure that you feel comfortable to be able to share the fears you have and the anger you have. And making sure that when you listen, that you actively listen. You know, so as we move forward with this and as we go, please make sure that we understand the hurt. I know I understand it. I understand the pain. But that we make sure that we look at each other and understand for all those things we saw, make sure when you look at the television and when you see the people who were out there protesting, that was all of us. That was all Americans. That was all of us here in the city. And know that. So as we move forward, know that we can be better. It's that time. We can talk about it. We can share it. And we can also be emotional about it, and it's okay. But just make sure that we treat each other with the civility, the dignity. And again, as I said before, we've got to make sure we don't plant anger in our young people. Because again, I say it as I go off that we reap what we sow. If we plant that anger and we don't plant that love, we'll be reaping hate later. Let's plant that love. Let's plant that civility. Let's plant that commonality of cause, of just treating each other and trying to improve the social existence of all of us. And we'll be a better, not just a city, but a better nation for it. Thank you all for everything you're doing. Chief, Deputy Chief, our committees. Thank you so much, Una, everyone. Let's just show some love to each other. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be hurt. And it's okay to express that. But do it in a peaceful, nonviolent way. Let your voices be heard. But don't do anything to diminish the lives of those who have sacrificed so that we can get here. Hey, thank you everyone so much, and I'll turn it back over to you, Una.
There isn't really much left to say, but thank you to the panelists. Thank you to all of who participated and sent in questions. Keep on sending them in. We want to hear what you have to say. Your police department they're nothing without the residents that they serve. And lastly, I just want to say good night, God bless. And remember, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. So if you go to a protest, a walk, a march, a vigil, please social distance. If you're close, wear a mask and be safe out there. Good night. Thank you, everyone.